Hey everyone, Dead by Daylight and Toxicity are two words that come hand in hand. The game has become known in many ways for its in-game toxicity between its two sides of survivor and killer. Today let's explore the history of this toxicity, all the different forms, and when they appeared and how they changed. One of the first forms of toxicity, and one that originated not from Dead by Daylight, but from ancient gaming practice, is that of teabagging. The origin of this I'm not entirely sure, but I think where I learnt it from was Halo. What's so interesting about this too is that it's debatably not even considered toxic in other games. It's maybe a little disrespectful, but it's generally considered just a bit of fun, a bit of a poke. But in DBD, it's almost always considered an act of toxicity, aggravation. Teabagging has been around since the very start of the game and its early days, a simple form of toxicity doable by any of the survivors, simply by crouching repeatedly. Typically used to annoy, aggravate, or sometimes intimidate killers or even other survivors. The teabagging game was changed for the first time with the release of Pig, who was the first character on the killer side who could technically crouch up and down, and return a teabag or two. The true king, however, came later with Ghostface, able to spam it just as fast as the survivors. This being one of the main reasons why people actually like to play him, is that he can teabag back. Pointing and come hearing, I guess is what I'll call it. This is an ability belonging to survivors. They can point and they can do a wave or come here action. The intent of these is for survivor coordination. It can be used in this way. I typically use this, for example, if there's a stealth killer watching myself and a teammate on a generator. I'll point to the killer or tell the teammate to come with me. It can have its uses for genuine coordination. However, what it's often used for is to be toxic. A typical thing to do is for a survivor to vault something and then point at the killer. This to many being an act meant to make them angry or agitate them. A "you can't catch me." The come here can be used too and simply encourages or riles the killer up to chase the survivor. Equally, these can be used by survivors in a genuine way toward killers too. Some see the points as simple, playful gestures. A come here could simply be the survivor wanting to be in chase, but not necessarily to agitate, but to simply play the game and have fun looping. It's one of those strange acts where whoever you ask, they'll have a different opinion on it. Did the survivor intend to be toxic, or were they simply encouraging the chase because they were enjoying it? Most would lean toward toxicity. This one really hasn't changed much through the years. There's only ever been two actions doable by survivors, and killers have never really been able to do the same back. They can sort of spam their powers and create these weird animations, but it's not quite the same. The opposite for killers could maybe be hitting the survivors on hook, sort of annoying them in a situation where they can't be caught, similar to pointing over a pallet or a window where the killer can't get to you. In that situation, a survivor can also not really do much, so maybe that could be the equivalent. Slugging and Tunneling are two toxic actions quite unique to DBD, due to it being an asymmetrical game, and further these terms only really being applicable to DBD. Slugging being the act of leaving a survivor on the ground so that they resemble a slug, then tunneling being the act of focusing only on one survivor as the killer, having tunnel vision. These things developed early on in the game as two strategies commonly looked down upon by players. They became such issues and points of contention, in fact, that the devs had to add specific perks to counter these actions. Bill was where they were really implemented, with his perks Unbreakable and Borrowed Time countering slugging and tunneling respectively. They were pretty successful too, and have been adjusted over the years. Over the years, we've also accumulated a whole lot more than these original two. In July 2022, Borrowed Time was implemented as base kit for survivors, meaning you got it regardless of running the perk or not. Issues like tunneling were debatably encouraged too at certain points in DBD history. For example, with the release of Myers, they added a bunch of obsession-based perks, an obsession being a unique survivor who provided a unique effect when you went for them. And because many of the effects were positive when you went for this survivor, it simply encouraged you to tunnel the survivor. Many of Myers' perks were eventually changed and moved away from the goal of tunneling. Nowadays, there's not really any perks I would would say that encourage tunneling, they all seem to be designed specifically to not encourage that. And the obsession isn't always the person you want to be going for, they're actually the person you often want to avoid. So that's the way they've sort of worked around it. In a similar way to slugging and tunneling, there's camping. Camping can be found in other games unlike slugging and tunneling, and simply refers to the killer camping nearby a hook or possibly an area around it. In the same way, this is viewed as toxic, as it targets or locks down a single player. A meme and the face of camping is Bubba, a killer able to instantly down multiple survivors. Basement Bubba is sort of the face of camping, with the basement being a confined area, with only one entrance, making it very easy to camp. In October of 2023, camping was sort of finally solved by adding an anti-camp feature. Basically, if you stand by the hook for too long, the survivor will eventually be able to unhook themselves automatically, without the need or help from another teammate. And further things like base kit borrowed time also helped with camping, allowing you to get safer saves. Camping has always sort of been a thing, and was the core strategy very early on into the game. Characters like Trapper were even able to place their bear traps directly beneath the hook when someone got unhooked, so it wasn't exactly like the game discouraged it originally. Bubba though, I would say, is the real turning point of camping, and was when it got very bad, and is what prompted many of these changes today. Gen rushing is sort of the survivor equivalent of tunneling, with it being a high focus on completing the objective for the survivor side in as quick a time as possible. This has taken many forms across the years, with the oldest version being the original brand new part, able to instantly complete a generator with the click of a button. A perk that contributed to it for a long time too was Prove Thyself, a perk that provided a stackable 15% bonus for each survivor working with you on a generator. It has taken many forms over the years though. Much like tunneling, it's highly debated whether this is indeed toxic, as many see it as just doing the objective. You have to do gens to get out, and so focusing hard on generators is just playing the game. Tunneling can be defended in a similar way. It's widely known after all that in the majority of matches, the most efficient strategy is to just get rid of one of the 4 survivors as soon as possible. Therefore tunneling is quite appealing in that sense. Flashlight clicking was something survivors used to be able to do from the game's inception, all up until patch 6.3.0 in 2022. Flashlight clicking simply being to repeatedly spam click the use button for the flashlight, which would make it repeatedly click and spam the beam toward its target. You can still kind of do this today, it's just a lot slower and it doesn't really have quite the same effect, but people do still do it. It's sort of an outdated form of toxicity, I suppose you could say. In 2022 it was removed, altering flashlights to have a slower click speed, which stopped this ability to spam click and create the sound. This change though wasn't even seemingly for toxicity reasons, but instead due to the possibility of it causing harm. I think because of epilepsy. However, this was more than likely a double patch of sorts, solving the clear problem for causing other players harm, whilst also removing a frequently complained about mechanic used to be toxic. Despite all this though, flashlight clicking was still around for about 6 years and was considered one of the clearest forms of toxicity. Its removal was ultimately a good thing. Whatever this is next up. This is something more recent over the last couple years, a new form of teabagging seemingly. This is one of the main ways of being toxic that I personally do find a little bit far. There's something about this action that just seems a bit much, a bit too fluid, and yeah. This action, whilst being possible since the game's inception, seems to have only been popularized recently. I've personally encountered this in a fair number of recent games where I hadn't before. This action is often used specifically on killers who are unable to teabag, which is the majority of them, a substitute action for it. What do you all think of this? Giving up is a form of toxicity that's quite unclear on its real definition. However, most would consider it toxic to give up for, well, any purpose really. This has happened throughout DBD history in face of various metas or overpowered characters. One of the most famous instances was when Legion were quite broken, with their strategy where you were basically unable to escape their pursuit, as they could force you to bleed out or allow you to down them. This caused mass DCs at the time and players to give up. A more recent example of this is with Skull Merchant. She's probably the case in fact of it happening the most in DBD history. This was largely down to her primary camping strategy at the time, in combination with the gen kick meta, which caused a number of issues within the community and mass DCs against Merchant. She could protect the gens with her drones whilst repeatedly kicking them with slowdown perks, making a very unenjoyable game. Even pro teams struggled to break out of Skull Merchant's hold, where many other characters have caused DCs in DBD history such as Legion or Hag, Skull Merchant is the clearest example of people giving up due to her playstyle and overall character, to the point that many even consider giving up against her specifically isn't even toxic, but instead playing her is. This is quite an outdated mindset though, with her going through a number of changes. Even after over a year of her being out of her broken state though, people still frequently DC against her or simply give up. A character that seems to invite toxicity of many forms simply by her existence within a match. So the game really did change in terms of giving up and DCs, or dying on purpose on first hook because of Skull Merchant. Bully squads as a term is something that has developed over the years and also changed. In the early days of DBD, a bully squad would be a 4-stack of survivors, all with flashlights, insta-blind ones, communicating to blind the killer as many times as possible, not for the goal of winning, but instead the goal of annoying them. That's where the term bully squad really comes from. It infers an idea that the squad of survivors is entering into a match to bully the killer player, annoying and frustrating them over winning. Often though, many teams who are just going into matches for fun can easily be mislabeled as a bully squad, just because they're playing together as a group of 4 or a SWIF. Nowadays I'm not even too sure what you'd bring as a bully squad. Probably some sabotage toolboxes, maybe some flashlights still, possibly you go for an anti-hook type build. There was a brief period where this was very strong with the old RPD and the old version of Boil Over, which made it very hard to hook people, especially when you worked as a team. There was also another occasion where bully squads could use the perks We're Gonna Live Forever and Soul Guard to out-heal the killer's attack rate, which was pretty crazy too. There's been lots of instances throughout DBD history, but those are some major ones. Endgame chat is a chat visible when a match ends, and is probably the most real and undeniable form of toxicity when it happens. People can use this chat to type just about anything to the other side, and so it can be quite visceral. Unfortunately, people can misuse the chat to be quite rude or use insults. This is the form of toxicity most unacceptable, as it's not just an in-game action which is debatable and interpretable. When you're telling someone to go fuck themselves, there's not really much room for discussion. It's not okay to do this to people under any circumstance. There was a point in DBD's history too where it did not have a chat filter. The chat filter currently removing and censoring certain words when typed out and sent, so before it was far worse. The chat filter isn't exactly perfect, but I mean, I would rather it be there than it not be there. Playing for Hatch is an interesting one and does apply to both sides. It used to be a bit different originally, as the hatch would spawn into the match far sooner, and was also not possible to close for the killer. Therefore, when found, the killer would stand beside it, and a hatch standoff would ensue. If the survivor jumps in, they could get grabbed, but their likely only chance of escape would be by jumping in. These could last a while. When the hatch got changed later down to be closable, and to spawn in closer to the end of the match, these issues went away. Now, the issues are more focused on killers slugging full teams to stop the hatch spawning at all, and confirming the 4K. For survivors, it's seen as toxic to abandon your team to go for the hatch, which is a solo escape only nowadays. Stealth-based perks like Distortion would often be used for this playstyle, and to avoid getting caught, so you could sneak away and get the hatch. Not leaving is another thing people believe to be toxic. Staying in the match longer than you're required to. The gates are open, all survivors are safe, yet some will still stay at the gate and wait for the killer. This used to be a lot worse too back before the endgame collapse existed. The endgame collapse being a mechanic that forces the game to end 3 minutes after opening an exit gate, or shutting the hatch. Back then, you could reasonably hold the game indefinitely until the server eventually got shut down, which I think is about an hour of playtime. Therefore, killers were sort of forced back then to push survivors out. Today it's not so much an issue, but people still don't like it. Some take the stance that they're staying out of altruism. They want the killer to get a hit on them before they leave. Most killer players, however, do not care about a single hit on a survivor exiting the match. Therefore, the whole practice is just generally considered toxic. This popularized the phrase in the community of just leave, and further the popularity of clips where survivors waiting at the exit gates are caught and downed by a killer. You'll see lots of them titled stuff like, on this episode of Just Leave, and stuff like that. Switching your item at the last second is oddly an action considered toxic by much of the community. The way this works is by concealing the item you intend to bring before the match, and switching at the last second to a flashlight or toolbox say. This can be done to conceal your intent to use that item, or a build focused on it. This is one of the stranger ones to me due to how little items really affect gameplay, at least nowadays. Back in the day, sure it was a bit more valid, valid, with really broken things like old keys, which could allow for 4-man escape through the hatch at 1 gen remaining, or 3 escapes at 2 gens, stuff like that. It was pretty crazy, to be fair. A last second switch to a key could make a difference. People mostly find this frustrating because they may adjust their build knowing there will be items brought into the match. A sudden change of item or character even can throw you off, as the timer is so close to completing too, it locks in the match, meaning you can't leave by pressing the leave button. I think this is why it's considered toxic, as it's sort of deceptive or a small trick being played on the other side. Even if its effect is very little, it's a small curveball, and it will typically make the killer assume that the survivors have something devious in store, as they were trying to conceal it. As mentioned before, this was more of an issue back before. Back then though, killers could even change their killer in the pre-game lobby. You could see a lineup of survivors all with flashlights, and you could switch to nurse if you wanted to, even if you'd queued as trapper. Therefore, this tactic was likely to avoid that. If you see 4 survivors with no items, you're going to probably be more inclined to think they're going to play less toxic, or be a quote-unquote bully squad. Therefore, they might conceal that they are hiding their items until the last moments when you cannot react. This has been used throughout DBD history, although admittedly happens less nowadays, due to items being nerfed down quite substantially. Flashlights are far weaker and can no longer insta-blind, medkits can no longer insta-heal, and toolboxes are far slower and have much weaker brand new parts. Still, people don't really like it when you switch at the last moment. Working with the other side. This has happened throughout DBD history, and well, it's sort of self-explanatory, this one. Working with the other side against your own just sort of sucks. This comes in many forms, from sandbagging, telling the killer where your teammates are, and so on. Toxicity in Dead by Daylight, therefore, is a strange thing. Something quite different to other games, I would say, where it's fairly debatable that many actions in-game that are considered toxic are simply the meta or efficient strategy of winning, but they're actively perceived as toxic. What do you think about toxicity in DBD? And which things do you perceive as toxic? Thanks for watching, and goodbye.